Welcome to Animal Chat, an Alberta SPCA podcast where we talk about animal welfare, animal behavior, and animal protection. I'm Dan Colby, and thank you for listening and for being passionate about animal welfare and compassionate for the animals in our province. Today, we're discussing how to plan your will and estate while keeping your pets in mind. Our animals are very important to us, and planning for their future should they outlive us is an important part of estate planning. My guest today is Alberta SPCA Executive Director Tara Johnston. Tara, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I'm really pleased to be here on this lovely fall day.
Well, Tara, when we're putting together a will, most people make decisions on where their assets will go, whether it be to their kids or other family members or maybe a charity. But we're here to say it's just as important to make it clear what happens to your pets.
That's right, Dan. We, as a society, we now, I think it's safe to say that people see their dog or their cat or their bird as a member of the family. And in terms of family, we want to ensure that we plan for their well-being should we not be there to enjoy time with them. So yeah, it's incredibly important that we plan for this possibility.
So the first step in all this is to have a will. And then it's important to make clear to the executor of your will what should happen to your animals should something happen to you. If you don't, then the executor will be making the decisions on what happens to the animals. Or if you don't have a will, it's a court-appointed executor who will be making those decisions. So important to make sure that it's someone that you know and trust to be following your instructions when it comes to your animals.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we want to make any assumptions when it comes to that. I think that, because our pets are family, we want to plan for the possibility that exists if we predecease them. We want to ensure that the executor or executrix understands very clearly who should be in charge of those animals. And ensure that it's someone who is aware that you've made that person a caretaker for their animals and that they have the capacity to manage that and are willing to manage that. So it really is an important decision, and it's important to ensure that the person who may be taking on this responsibility has the knowledge, the skills, and the experience to do so. So those are all important pieces and all really important to have those clear ideas and those discussions in advance of putting it in your will. And then once it's in the will, to ensure that these individuals are aware that that is the case.
Now, you mentioned your people, when we have this conversation, maybe thinking of cats and dogs or maybe birds. We're also talking about exotic animals here, and birds would fall under that, like parrots, but reptiles as well. And in some cases, livestock, including horses. These are animals that often outlive their owners.
Absolutely. And also in many cases have very specific care requirements. Exotics are a really good example that they need environments that are designed for them specifically. There's a significant cost in some cases, certainly from a livestock perspective. There is some cost, as part of that. And someone who understands these needs, whether it be the environmental needs of exotic animals, the type of care that they require in animal husbandry, all of those things are really important. And also to ensure that the individuals who are responsible, again, have skills, knowledge, and experience, but they also have the financial capacity to manage these responsibilities and for the length of time that they have to invest in these animals. So, it's something very worthy of consideration and discussion with the appropriate people in advance.
In a lot of cases, people would likely leave some money in the will specifically for caring for those animals if it's going to be a long-term thing.
Absolutely, because of the significant cost and the potential length of time that these individuals may have these animals for. And again, that's specific to horses, specific to exotic animals who can have fairly extensive lifespans. So we just really need to give that consideration in advance.
I know that in my family, my mother and father-in-law have a macaw parrot that the bird can live 30, 40 years. So there's a reasonable good chance that it will outlive my in-laws. And it's the discussion has happened already that the bird will come live with my family, and that's that we're prepared for that because it's not just as easy as having a cat or a dog for a few years.
That's right. It's a real commitment for sure, and commitment of cost and time, and really, as I was saying earlier, it's really a capacity issue. And so, and as an organization, we have seen situations where unfortunately an individual has not had these discussions, has not maybe had the ability or certainly the thinking to consider, what's going to happen in their absence. And we have found situations where individuals have unfortunately deceased, left their animals behind, and there was no one to care for them. And so from the time it took for that situation to resolve, from the individual in fact dying to the time that the animals were ultimately managed, it was weeks and months, and of course someone had to be assigned to care for those animals and manage them in that interim. And again, I do wonder, while the animals did get moved on to the next step in their lives, it took some time, and whether the level of care was appropriate for the individual who passed. I mean, would that have been their wishes? I suspect not, because there was a gap there, and no one wants that. No one wants to think that in their absence, their animals will not be cared for in a way that they cared for them while they were living. So it's a pretty serious situation, and as I said earlier, really worthy of some discussion.
And on that note, the plan may be to instruct the executor of the estate on where the animals will go for a new home, because if it's a horse, the I'll use that as an example. The caregiver may not be able to care for that animal for the next 20 years. So the horse may be moved on to another organization to find a home, and you may want to let your caregiver know where you want, the organizations that you trust to find your animal a new home. So in the case of horses, you may have specific organizations that you would like to see your horse go to be rehomed, as opposed to just being sold at an auction, say.
Well, and for all people, life changes. The individual who you felt had the capacity, skills, and knowledge, and certainly does have that, they may experience life as well, and may have to move on as well. So those are discussions you ought to have with your caretaker. What is acceptable to you? Yes, this caretaker is, but what if their life situation changes and they need to make changes? All of those things, really, those discussions about comfort level with where the animals may end up, that is really important, that discussion occurs. Life happens, and unfortunately death happens. And so all of the issues need to be addressed well in advance. So there's a comfort level for both the individual who's making these decisions and making it so, and the person accepting the animal into their life. So yeah, and because it can be such a commitment, both from a time and financial perspective, again, those conversations need to happen well in advance.
Well, still on the topic of livestock, when it comes to animals such as cattle, first, they have a lot of value, so it's important to make decisions on where they will go. But it's also critical to appoint a caretaker for those animals in the short term, who has the knowledge and experience with those that type of livestock, and knows how to care for them and can check on them regularly.
where we see that being a potential problem is if you've identified someone in the city of Edmonton, for example, to check on and manage your livestock, but the livestock are out in St. Paul, and require fairly regular attendance to ensure that they're getting the care they require. That could be really hard for that person to manage that. So again, giving some consideration to who has the skills, the knowledge, and really is best positioned to manage those animals, to ensure their well-being. And best position could be both as I said, the capacity, but also in terms of distance traveled to attend. You don't want to assign someone who lives such a distance away that it becomes impossible for them to check on them and on any sort of regular or frequent basis. I mean, that's just not fair to the animals, and certainly not fair to the individual who's been put in charge with them. So, it's just those, I guess I want to say simple considerations, but really, again, have that conversation, have that consideration well in advance. So the individuals that have been assigned responsibility are aware and have the ability to manage those animals in a way that meets your needs and those animals' needs, so that we can all be comfortable with our decisions.
When putting together a will, we probably should talk a little bit about that. A lot of people will put a charity organization like the Alberta SPCA or another animal welfare organization as a beneficiary of their estate. We see that regularly with us. Important, as we've learned over the years, for the person to make it exceptionally clear which organization that they are talking about when making this donation. And as simple as that sounds, we have seen all regularly where there have been problems. So you want to explain how that looks from your point of view?
Yeah, and I mean, as an organization, we have been so incredibly fortunate to our donors who have chosen to make a legacy gift to our organization. And when we engage on those discussions, we make it abundantly clear what our organization is responsible for doing, what we stand for, to ensure that there's no misunderstanding about the role we play in animal welfare. For instance, someone who maybe cares deeply about wildlife. And why not? I think that's an excellent consideration. But as an organization, we're not typically dealing with wildlife. That would be another organization, potentially, World Wildlife Foundation comes to mind. So again, that's just an example where people who care deeply about animals, generally speaking, care deeply about all animals, but they may have a particular bend. And we want to ensure that the individual who's choosing to donate understands our role in animal welfare and understands other roles that other organizations play, so that there's no misunderstanding. And I think it's very important that when you are speaking to your, say you're seeking legal assistance, that you ensure that if for instance you wanted to, or someone wanted to donate to our agency, that they cite our full name, our specific address, and possibly even our business number, which is on our printed materials. So just so that if those who are engaged on writing the will understand very clearly who the agency is. It's this agency with this address and this business number, or whatever the case may be, just so there's absolutely no confusion about who you want your legacy gift to go to.
All very important considerations. Not an easy topic, but an important one. And certainly when having these discussions about all of these issues in advance makes it a lot less stressful on all involved. Tara, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of Animal Chat.
Thanks, Dan. so glad that we were able to have this discussion today. It's incredibly important, as you said, for everyone's comfort, but most importantly for the animals that people dearly love and are members of their family or part of their world. We need to take steps to best manage them and ensure their ongoing well-being and enrichment. So thank you, Dan. Thank you so very much.
Well said, Tara. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please share with others and leave us a positive review on the site where you listen to your podcasts. It really does help us. And please check out our other podcast episodes. You can find those on the same websites or on our website, albertaspca.org/news/podcasts. And you may want to check out episode 9 from a few weeks back, and how having a workplace pet policy can really improve the productivity of your staff and is great for the animals as well. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.